Take a moment to get to know your Ebola criminals real well, up close and personal. These are just some of the faces that are behind the diabolical super strain of Ebola that's spooking the entire planet. Get to know them real well and listen to what they're saying real closely.
Just briefly, I want to turn to the science issue about the vaccine. So, nature doesn't really owe humans anything. And one example of that is vaccine development. So we can put a lot of money and effort and resources and brilliant minds towards developing a safe and effective vaccine against an infectious pathogen, but there's no guarantee that that'll work, that that's good enough. And the most glaring examples, I would say, ones we're all familiar with, HIV. Hepatitis C. There are no FDA-licensed vaccines against any parasitic disease.
But see, they have patents on certain strains of all those diseases that he named. That means they had something to do with the creation of them. But he's telling you there's no vaccine for them. I'm sure you believe that, don't you, Sleepo? Let's go on.
So those are some examples. And a lot of brilliant minds and effort and research has been put forward. For example, to developing a malaria vaccine, to developing an HIV vaccine, but we're not there. So I only say that because there's no guarantee that we'll have a safe and effective Ebola vaccine. Hopefully it's going to be safe. Hopefully it'll induce an immune response, antibodies and T cells that are going to be protective. So the last thing I want to say is that using the model, trying to learn from the past is prologue to now and the future, one thing that we've tried to do for almost 30 years with regard to developing HIV vaccine is to look for a protective immune response that occurs naturally. Unfortunately, as we all know, that almost never occurs with HIV. But with Ebola, it seems that it does. So in this outbreak, approximately 50%, it depends on how accurate those numbers are, and only time will tell, but approximately 50% of people have survived. They're not feeling really good. They're feeling very bad when they've survived, but some are feeling better than others, sooner than others, etc. So one of the points I put, point 16 out of 18 here, is that persons who are cured of Ebola but underappreciated, and I'd say from multiple points of view, one of which is the scientific point of view. So I'd argue that it would be potentially of value to vaccine development against Ebola if we were able to better understand the immune response that's been induced by the natural Ebola virus infection itself, in terms of antibody, what type, how high the titer is it neutralizing, is it not, high affinity, low affinity, and what kind of cytotoxic T cell responses are induced by the natural infection, and then try and mimic our vaccines to reproduce the natural protective immunity against Ebola.
Well, and hope that the virus doesn't mutate.
Right, which it already has. This is almost a different species. It's a different strain of the Zaire species.
See, that means...
And that is another question about...
See, that means they have patents on the species that they've helped create, helped supersize, but it's still evolving into something that they can't control. They want you to believe that because they know you will. Look at his face.
Whether a vaccine for this species would be effective across the range. But let me...
But can I just
add
one comment to that? And even...
No sense in listening to the rest of this babble, psycho babble. But we know the bottom line is they're trying to start a pandemic in order to get us into a global martial law. But it's not working because they're showing their hand every time. Look at that evil hand. Ah!